Morning Trumptopia, a special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast. Welcome back, folks. Today started off interestingly for me. I was unable yesterday, which is when I think it happened, right? Unless I've got my chronologies all wrong. When President Trump gave his Oval Office speech about Corona. There was a lot of things going on with that speech. Not the least of which was the very real concern that he looks like he was a little under the weather. But, I'm not encouraging paranoid thinking, but as you may have heard, this has been reported out by many outlets. I don't think it's fake news, but he was at a convention thing for, of course I don't have it. I don't have it out in front of me. I should look it up before I start talking about it, right? So here's what I've heard. Here's what comes to mind off the top of my head, not having any of the stuff open in front of me. Various Republican politicians are paradoxing? No. What are they doing? Quarantining. They are going under self-quarantine. Sorry, the coffee hasn't kicked in yet. Because they were all at an event and shook hands with a guy that was later tested and confirmed to be carrying and sick with COVID-19. Trump was at this event. I don't remember which event it was. So I'm going to type in self-quarantine and see if I get an article about it, because that's... Well, I guess I should have typed in something more, because that wasn't specific enough. But, okay, I don't want to speculate. I don't know. He may have just been, got the sniffles from all his... There is a conspiracy theory that the president is into snorting Adderalls or something. I don't know. He did look a little off. And he always looks a little off when he's reading from, a teleprompter. So there's that. All the conspiracy claims or counterclaims that may or may not come out of that speech. The thing that I found really interesting, and I haven't seen anybody else comment on, is that it almost sounded like, and actually this was it at the Oval Office speech or was it at the other news conference? But it's something that I just caught, because I have not been monitoring the news as vigilantly as I often do the last few days, because I've been preoccupied with other stuff. But as you may have noticed, I didn't do a few days worth of episodes there, or I didn't do any episodes for the last couple days, in part because of this other stuff that I'm preoccupied with. But I digress. In trying to review for today, I came across a statement that Trump made, either at the Oval Office speech or at that other press conference that he gave, where he just walked off. But at some point, and I wish I had the capacity and the staff and the recourses to just be able to go, getting media, because I'd love for the podcast to be kind of like an on the media kind of podcast. The show On the Media? A little bit like that. Don't sue me, On the Media. I'm saying you guys are a cool show. And I would like to be more like that. I'd love to be able to be like, this is what they played on Fox News. And this is what they're talking about over, et cetera, et cetera. I digress. On some platform or another, while preparing very badly for today's podcasting, I heard Donald Trump say something to the effect, and I am paraphrasing here. I am not attempting to build a direct quote from memory. I'm terrible at that. But something to the effect of that he was going to make a deal with the insurance companies to cover the expenses of everyone's who gets sick from COVID-19. Now, I'm asking, I say it that way because I'm asking myself, did I hear him right? I'm really asking myself, did I hear him correctly? And if I did hear him correctly, is that not ostensibly free Medicare for all only for COVID-19? That's what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like to me, that he's trying to give away, or that he's trying to declare that this disease will not cost you anything if you get it. But he's also been saying crazy cuckoo stuff like, some people apparently get this disease and don't feel anything, just go to work. Well, if they do, and they had gotten tested, they should have stayed home, preventing further spread, right? So, he's definitely kind of messaging all over the place on this one, trying to instill a false sense of confidence that we've got everything really expertly under control, which it clearly does not seem, that does not seem like a very accurate description or a very fair thing to say or a very true statement, right? Like you can't argue that the way in which the very limited and truncated and damaged CDC, which was not Obama's fault, that's something I've heard and seen bantied about, this discussion about like Trump making the claim that Obama made some decisions during his time in office that crippled the national ability to respond to pandemics. But that statement is radically inaccurate in as much as that like the majority of the damaging cuts were things he himself conducted, right? While draining the swamp and reducing big government into smaller government. But I'm also not a fact checker, right? Never claimed to be. So don't get all wound up about something I say. I feel horrible. I feel like I rambled on for way too long in the last episode, and I already want to end this episode, and it's only 8 minutes and 40 some odd seconds long. I think these are astonishing times to live through, and I think that a sense of humor is required. So forgive me if I speak in such a way as that I might be seen or misinterpreted as to be taking too much light of the situation. People will get sick and suffer, and that'll be tragic, and people will, and suffering is not to be taken lightly. But we must also keep our eyes on the horizon, right? Like, where are we going with this? And arguably, surviving is right there on the forefront, regardless of which, if any, of the conspiracy theories are true or not. And quite frankly, and this is something I keep coming back to, because it's my most controversial statement, and I'm hoping that it gets a lot of engagement, really. But here's where I sit with conspiracy theory. As I was spouting on a bit about in the last segment, I consider myself a non-biased observer of the conspiracy theory community and some of the samplings of the content it turns out. And I am of the humble opinion, as I sip my morning coffee and share with you today, that the conspiracy theory community as a phenomena, akin to many other social institutions, has arguably been co-opted, hijacked, infiltrated by whoever the sources are that delight in trolling and muddying the waters by cranking out a lot of screwy information. You know, am I the authority of what is and is not true? Absolutely not. Never will I ever pretend to have that kind of authority. Do I have a firm set of opinions about what I have reviewed and have come to determine is or is not true? Perhaps. But that's something I'll probably ramble about at another time. What do I think is going on right now? I think in terms of the difficult times that we're navigating, we are going through actual pandemic in the technical sense that it's spreading fast and it's spreading everywhere, and many people will be impacted. But we're also facing this pandemic in the glaring light of all the other horrible possible pandemics that we turn a blind eye to, that we just sort of cope with as normal, or that we just don't have as much of a media feeding frenzy about their pandemic status. And that as we navigate these challenging and tension-riddled times, it is incumbent upon us all to always return to a place of calmness, always return to a place of clarity, and always to encourage and support each other to do so. As I was trying to indicate in the last segment, this is more important than it might be. It might seem at first, or it might appear on the surface, especially if someone's coming at it with a jaded point of view and is ready to dismiss such thoughts as anchoring oneself in a well-grounded, centered place of calm clarity. But in my humble opinion, that's quite a beneficial place to take action from. So, in terms of how events are playing out here, it seems to be a consensus, or at least as of this morning, scanning the headlines and whatnot, that things appear to be unfolding here in the United States, formerly known as the United States, currently transitioning into Trumptopia, and or probably already transitioned, right? That arguably things are unfolding at like a pace that might be tracking that what was happening in Italy, which can be quite alarming and frightening sounding, because Italy is locking down, right? Best I have gathered, they are really starting to clamp down on protocols and trying to get everyone to just sort of shelter in place, as they say, during natural disasters and other dangerous times, and that might be very much where we will be in a week's time. Possible, impossible, outrageous, real, alarmist, already there. have we been downplaying it so much here because of the lack of readiness? Perhaps. Should we go into a panic about it? Absolutely not. What we can do is focus on not falling for the psyops, right? Above and beyond the bare minimum, which is taking care of yourself. And that includes double checking that you actually know how to take care of yourself, by the way. If you just randomly sort of have that vague notion of thinking you know how to take care of yourself, but you actually know nothing about yourself and your body and how it works, then maybe you don't know, you should look into it. Maybe you should Google some things and double check that what you Googled is accurate before you go doing it. If those prognostications are accurate, then we can expect to experience, things getting worse before they get better. I've always found that somewhere between two opposing extremes is what actually happens. So between the extreme of Trump's most blatant minimization, that everything's gonna be fine and it's gonna just miraculously disappear, and the most frightening, ominous, dark-sounding things of a second and third wave of it torturing us all through the holidays, I find that odds are some splitting the middle down the center kind of thing is most likely to take place. Once you eliminate the most ridiculous things. So, I've been reading the warnings about FEMA death camps for at least a good 15, almost 20 years. But have we all ended up in FEMA death camps? No. So, you gotta be able to discern the junk, and there's a lot of junk out there. Sorry to get redundant there. But, always worth stating again, folks, don't go jumping all in on something just because it sounds like it might be real until you've taken time to think about it, compared it to some other stuff, crisscrossed sources, and checked. Now, there are people who will dismiss me out of hand because I read stuff off the World Health Organization website. And be like, oh, you're brainwashed, sheeple, you don't know what's going on, you're full of lies, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, really? Well, I've read stuff off of crazier sources, too, before, and I've done some digging around. I picked the things that I think, despite whatever arguments against them, appear to be consistent with what actually happens. So, anyways, we can do a whole episode about specific conspiracy theories. I mean, we could do conspiracy theory episodes forever, right? I mean, Ancient Aliens has been on for how many years? But the sort of the ninja sword of Occam's razor slices through them, and it's like, how complicated and ridiculous and improbable are they based on having too many required assumptions and clauses and extenuating circumstances and things that are very, very highly unlikely. All right, get rid of all those. Very unlikely to be happening. And if they're unlikely to be happening, why are we stressing out about them? Focus on what's tangibly actually real, first of all. And what's tangibly actually real, for better or worse, tends to be confirmed by, experience and multiple sources. Now, I think the trickiest problem that we face right now as we deal with this this epidemic, as we enter crisis mode around it, is that there is such an overwhelming amount of, there's a cross current. It's like pro and con echo chambers of misinformation for everything. So like there's like torrents of crazy pro and con stuff going on around it. Like, where do you think, where is the pro? Like promoting fear mongering could be the pro. Where's the con? Minimizing, dismissing it is like laughable. There you go. That's how you define the two sides. Of like fake news, kind of propaganda sounding psyop stuff getting thrown around. Like, and it's shown up everywhere. If I'm seeing it on Facebook, right? Like, Facebook isn't the whole internet. But if it's getting drudged up and bandied around on Facebook, then what's going on? And one must return to that center of grounding and clarity and remember if one remembers the purpose of such disinformation, then it becomes clear and easier to discern what items are disinformation. Because they're designed to muddy the waters, they're designed to distract and divide. They're designed to be alarmist. They're designed to generate anxiety and panic. They're designed to cause conflict. They're designed to sweep you up in a sense of like, I'm in this group and it's us versus them, whoever they are. Those kinds of things, right? And they generally depend on you taking their assertions as proven, with the proof out of sight, out of mind. I don't know. Then again, when you start trying to picking apart fake news and trying to analyze like how it works and what is fake news and what isn't fake news, you start to wonder and you start to question and you start to really, go around in circles. But with clarity, you can always come back to, does any of its claims deny organic physical reality? Right? Etc. But I digress. So interesting times, challenging times, and definitely very disruptive times. And there's going to be a lot of impact that's indirect and felt by people who aren't even sick. But hopefully, as we move forward, better information becomes available and clarity is ascertained about the actual disease and how to manage it into submission, which is what we do to disease, which is why, surprise, surprise, new diseases come about. Nature is a system of systems, and in nature, everything is food for everybody else. So we will never live in a world, I don't think, unless we all become robots, that is completely 100% free of disease. We can only strive for a world in which we understand and have a healthy spiritual relationship with nature and reality, so we can cope with disease in a meaningful way that's in harmony with nature and reality and not toxic. Because what good is managing a disease if by managing it we do other toxic things to ourselves and each other? Then we're not really winning, are we? If we're going to talk about things in terms of winning. But I digress. So, remember to always set the two, whenever the two extremes are blaring, to set your sights somewhere in the middle and realize that the two extremes are extremes. Having said that, always remember that appropriate precautions are not to be mocked, dismissed, laughed at, or taken lightly. There's a reason why, precautions and prevention are valued and are worth having, established protocols about. Okay. So with that, I'll wrap things up and be back a little later in the day.